Hello BookTube! Today I'm going to show you which books I've read in January, or rather which books I finished in January, because I read a lot of stuff at the same time, so I always have like 4 or 5 books going on, but some I finish, some I don't, and so yeah, I never read 14 books. I can never show you a stack like this at the end of a month like other booktubers do, because I'm very busy. I don't have that much time to read. But I've managed to finish 4 books. 3? 4. 4 books this month, and I'm going to show you which ones they were. The first one is called Der Milchkontrolleur, a German one. A Milchkontrolleur is a milk controller who is usually employed by a farmers association, by a dairy farmers association or co-op, who goes around to the dairy farms and measures how much milk the cows are giving, what the quality is, and he takes little test tubes of the milk of each cow and gives them to the association to be tested, so the dairy farmers know the quality of their milk and the amount of their milk and know how much money they're going to get paid for it. So this book is a little whodunit. The protagonist is a milk controller called Hans-Georg Almers, and he finds a body. So his brother works as the state prosecutor in the next bigger town, and his brother then starts investigating this murder and is very, very quick to draw conclusions and to actually get people arrested. And Hans-Georg doesn't think that his brother has got the right person, so he starts investigating himself. And it's not a very action-packed book. It's very cozy and you get to know Hans-Georg and you get to know his neighbors and you get to know the farmers and the different cows and his work, and it goes at a very leisurely pace, but it's quite entertaining nonetheless. For me, it was especially entertaining because it takes place in a fictional village around my hometown where I went to school. So I sort of could imagine what the village looks like and what it's like to live there, and also the town where I went to school gets mentioned a bit as well, so I could recognize places, which for me was very funny. Anyway, so the murderer gets caught in the end, or does he? The vocabulary of this book is not too difficult, I would say. There are a few terms like milk controller and state prosecutor maybe that you might have to look up. But if you're at a medium level of German, you should be able to read this with no huge problems. The second book I read was the sequel to The Milk Controller. It's called Death of a Dairy Farmer. It's 2 years later, and Hans-Georg again finds a body. And again, his brother, the state prosecutor, jumps to conclusions very quickly. People get arrested very quickly. And of course, it's not the right people, because Hans-Georg investigates himself and finds out the truth. And you again get to know Hans-Georg and his friends and his cows. But again, it's very entertaining. You learn just as much about a village in the north of Germany as you learn about who the murderer actually is. So yeah, I will link both books in the box below, and also some of the vocabulary you might come across in these books. Book number 3 that I finished this month was actually a DNF. I count it as finished because I will not continue with it for now, but I actually did not finish it completely. It was Die Magier seiner Majestät, which is the German translation of Sourcerer to the Crown, written by Showa. And it's about a sorcerer called Zacharias, who is black and inherits a position as sorcerer to the crown. And his co-workers, the other sorcerers, don't really believe that he's the right person for the job, but they can't really do anything about it. And, you know, and he's black on top of it. And they don't like him very much. And I really liked the blurb on the back when I bought it, and started reading it, and the prologue is really interesting. It was very promising. I really liked it. But then in chapter 1, it was dragging so much. It was right at the beginning. We're at some soiree where, I don't know, lady this and sir that, and he's died and she's mourning, and who you have to talk to sort of, you know, sidle up to and get his approval so you can use his influence. And it's set in a magical alternative London of the Regency era, but it was dragging on so much. Whenever I had to put the book down, whether it was because I had to go to bed, or I had to put it back into my bag because I had to change trains or whatever, afterwards I didn't really look forward to getting it out again and starting up again and continuing. It was more a chore. So I came home, and usually if I have a good book going, I come home and I'm like, okay, continue reading now. But with this one, it was like, continue reading. Yeah. So yeah, I looked it up on Goodreads and to see what my friends thought of it. And they've read the English translation, or the English, is it original in English or is it a translated work? I'm not sure right now. Anyway, and they all wrote, oh yeah, nice book, but you know, it only really started getting good at page 150. And to be honest, I didn't make it to page 150. I've decided to put it down right now. I'm not giving it away yet. I want to give it a second chance, but not in the foreseeable future. So it's going on the shelf together with the other maybe books, and I'll see if I pick it up again at some point in the future. Book number 4 that I finished this month is Death of a Critic, written by German author Martin Walser. I have to tell you a little bit about this book. It started a huge literary scandal in Germany before it was even published. Because in Germany we had a literature critic called Marcel Reich-Ranitzky, who had a huge influence on the literary world. He was dubbed the Pope of Literature, and he certainly acted like it as well. So he had a TV show that was hugely popular, and whenever he praised a book, everybody would buy it. And whenever he put a book down and said this is rubbish, then you were basically finished as an author. And obviously a lot of authors didn't like him very much, because he introduced the literary world to the concept of literature being either good or bad and nothing in between. There were no shades of grey. Before, literature critics would, in newspapers or wherever they wrote their reviews, they would always go, oh, the book has this point going for it, which is really, really good, and this was not so good, but however, and so on. So they would sort of mediate their opinions. But Marcel Reich-Ranitzky never did that. For him, literature was black or white, and it was either good or bad, and it was either really good or really bad. So he reviewed a book of Martin Walser and gave it a scathingly bad review. And Martin Walser was so upset about it that he wrote this book, Death of a Critic. where the fictional author called Hans Lach is accused of murdering the literature critic André L. König. And obviously those two figures in the book are Martin Walser and Marcel Reich-Ranitzky in real life. And before the book came out, all the literature critics and all the journalists and all the newspapers tried to get their hands on it, on a preview copy, on an ARC, and everybody discussed it and everybody took sides. They were either for or against one or the other. And the thing is, nobody I've ever met has actually read the actual book. So I really wanted to know what it was like. And I got a copy of it, and I got to about the middle, because the book itself is brilliant. However, the style is really complicated. It is told in first-person perspective by a friend of this fictitious author Hans Lach, who is investigating this murder charge, and he's talking to the police, and he's talking to Hans Lach in prison, and he's talking to the wife of Erl König, and talking to like all the people who knew either of them, to find out what their relationship was and what their last meeting was about and all of these things. But there's no dialogue in this book at all. It's written in reported speech, and whenever he talks to somebody who's telling him something what somebody else said, it's reported speech within reported speech. And if that person is then quoting somebody else who said something else about somebody else, it's threefold. We have reported speech within reported speech within reported speech, and it got so difficult. I had to take notes on who is talking to whom, talking about whom, saying what, quoting whom, saying what. And it just got more and more and more complicated the further it went on. And I gave up in the end. I will be reading the last chapter because I do want to find out whether Hans Lach actually murdered André L. König or not. But I really can't do another 120 pages of this reported speech debacle. One thing I had to mention, what I really liked about this book, was the name André Erl König, because Erl König is a double-barreled name that could be a German surname and wouldn't raise suspicion. However, the Erl König is a famous ghostly fairy king in a poem by the famous poet Goethe. And the Erl König is able to kill innocents by a mere touch. So I found it very fitting that his fictional literary critic was called Erl König by last name. So the book was brilliant, but I was not up to it. I have also bought two new books, two ebooks, so I can't hold them up. I can only insert the cover. The first one is called A Little Lumpen Novelita, and it is written by Roberto Bolaño. And it is about Bianca, who lives in Rome with her brother. They're orphaned and live in their parents' apartment, have to support themselves with a number of not so great jobs. And one day her brother brings home two petty criminals who sort of shack up with them. And they hedge a plan. They want to rob a guy who's got a safe full of, I assume, money. And so they try to get close to this guy to sort of stake out what they want to do. And it doesn't work out the way they think it should. And that's about all I know so far, because I'm going to read it with a little book club on Goodreads in February. The second ebook I bought is by Ryo Murakami and is called Popular Hits of the Showa Era. It is set in Tokyo and is about a gang war between two very, very different gangs One consists of young men who like to hang out on street corners and smoke and sing karaoke, and the other gang is a group of elderly ladies, elderly businesswomen who have a very firm grip on their businesses. And as far as I know, somebody dies and then revenge is exacted, and these two very different groups start a gang war against each other. And I think they sort of decimate each other until only two are left and there's a big showdown. And I'm looking very much forward to this book because it sounds great. So I'm going to read that in February as well. That's it for my little reading month of January. It wasn't a stack of books, but I never promised you one. So leave me a comment and tell me if you've read any of the books, of the English books I've mentioned, and if yes, whether you've liked them or not. And let me know what you think about the two German books I've introduced you to at the beginning. And leave me a thumbs up, that would help my channel grow. And if you don't want to miss my next video, click on the subscribe button and the little bell. And I hope you're watching next time. Bye!